The Alpha King whispered, "Look at me when you're afraid," and her wolf obeyed every night. The forest of Varendor was alive with whispers. Even in daylight, the mist clung to the twisted branches like fingers, hiding secrets that no villager dared face. Legends told of wolves that were more than beasts, of shadows that walked and listened, of a curse older than the kingdom itself. Lyra ran through the underbrush, her breath loud against the quiet of the trees. Her dark hair tangled with the branches, and her wolf companion, her own spirit, she felt, moved as one with her. She could feel the power inside her, a restless energy that surged when fear touched her. Tonight, as always, she was running from it. The villagers whispered her name like a prayer and a warning at once. "The wolf girl," they said, "she carries a curse." She had been born different, and that difference had frightened everyone around her. Lyra had learned not to trust the world, but her wolf, always silent, always watchful, reminded her that she was not alone. Night was falling when she stumbled into a clearing. There, surrounded by the soft glow of fireflies, stood the soldiers of the kingdom. Their armor reflected the dying light, and at the center of them was a man whose presence seemed to command the air itself. Kale, the Alpha King of Varendor, looked down at her with eyes like storm clouds. Lyra froze. Her wolf growled low in her chest, sensing danger, sensing authority, sensing something deeper that she could not name. "You've been running," Kale said, his voice smooth but heavy with power. "Why?" Lyra opened her mouth, but no words came. Fear coiled in her stomach, but she remembered the stories the villagers told. The king was merciless, unyielding. And yet, there was something in his gaze, something that stirred a strange recognition in her wolf. "Step forward," Kale commanded. Against her better judgment, she obeyed. Her wolf within her stirred at the sound of his voice as if compelled. "You are different," Kale said, circling her slowly like a predator studying a rare prey. "And yet, you are not afraid of me as most are." Lyra's lips trembled, but she did not speak. Her wolf growled softly, echoing the hesitation in her chest. Kale stopped, and his eyes seemed to pierce through the layers she had built around herself. "Look at me when you're afraid," he whispered, and for the first time Lyra felt a pull stronger than fear. She met his gaze, and the world seemed to shrink to just the two of them. Her wolf stirred violently, claws unsheathed within her mind, heart racing. She obeyed not out of fear but out of something she could not yet name, recognition perhaps, or the stirrings of trust. Kale nodded once, satisfied. "You will come with me," he said. "Tonight." The soldiers surrounded her, but she did not resist. Resistance felt futile, but also strangely irrelevant. The forest, which had once felt like freedom, now seemed like a cage that could not protect her from what was coming. The journey to the castle was silent except for the soft crunch of boots on the forest floor. Lyra kept her head down, her wolf restless, shifting beneath her skin. Kale walked beside her, not touching, not speaking, yet his presence was a constant pressure like gravity. When they reached the gates, the massive doors of the castle loomed over her. Varendor Castle was a fortress of stone and shadows, with towers that pierced the mist and walls that whispered the histories of kings long dead. Kale's hand rested briefly on the gate before it swung open, revealing the great hall, lit by torches that cast flickering shadows across marble floors. "Serve me here," Kale said. "You will obey my command." Lyra bristled at the word obey, but the wolf inside her pressed her to silence. She had learned long ago that defiance alone was not always survival. She lowered her eyes. "You will not be punished," Kale added, reading the tension in her posture. "But you will learn control. And perhaps trust." Lyra's heart raced. Trust was a word she had almost forgotten. She had trusted no one but the forest and the wolf within her. But the king, Kale, was different. He carried a weight she could feel, a curse she could sense, though she did not yet understand it. That night she was given a small chamber near the edge of the castle. It overlooked the forbidden gardens, where shadows moved as though alive. Her wolf prowled restlessly inside her, sensing the magic in the stones, the whispers of old curses, the pulse of the king's own hidden power. Kale visited her before the moon had fully risen. He stood in the doorway, silent, as if testing whether she was brave enough to speak first. "Lyra," he said finally, "your wolf is not just fear, it is strength." She shivered, unsure whether to feel relieved or afraid. Strength had never been something she associated with herself. Her wolf growled softly, acknowledging him. "Do not mistake this for submission," she said, her voice low. "I obey, but I am not yours." Kale's lips curved slightly, almost a smile. "I do not ask for ownership," he said. "Only for acknowledgement. Look at me when you're afraid and you may yet find freedom." Lyra's wolf stirred again, heart pounding. She could feel something shifting inside her, a tug between fear and fascination, control and surrender. The air in the room felt charged, as if magic, or something older, was waiting just beyond the walls. As the night deepened, Lyra could not sleep. She rose quietly, padding to the window to look at the gardens. Mist swirled around the trees like ghosts, and distant howls echoed from the forest beyond. She knew those sounds intimately. They were the calls of her own soul, calling her to remember the wildness she carried. But tonight, something was different. Among the familiar howls, she thought she heard another, deeper, commanding, familiar. Kale's wolf. No, Kale himself. His presence seemed to linger in the garden, beyond the reach of sight, yet close enough to touch the edge of her awareness. Her own wolf stirred restlessly, sensing a connection she could not yet name. Lyra pressed her hand to the window, feeling the pulse of the night, feeling the pull toward the castle walls, toward the king, toward a destiny she had never imagined. Then, just before the first pale light of dawn, Kale appeared at the window. He did not speak, only watched her. His eyes held storms and secrets, grief and command, and something else, something dangerously tender. Lyra met his gaze, and for the first time she felt neither fear nor defiance but recognition. Her wolf quieted within her, listening. For a moment, the castle, the forest, the curse, and the king, all of it, seemed suspended in that single, charged silence. And then a howl split the dawn from the forest beyond. Not her wolf, not any she had known, but something ancient, angry, and waiting. Lyra's wolf leapt within her, claws and teeth of instinct unsheathed, and Kale's hand rose instinctively, as if he could feel the danger through the very air. Lyra turned to see him watching the horizon, eyes sharp, jaw set. His calm, commanding presence did not falter, yet she could see the tension beneath it. He whispered the words again, as if to herself and the wolf. "Look at me when you're afraid." Lyra obeyed, heart hammering, and in that moment something passed between them, an unspoken pact, a fragile bridge between power and fear, loneliness and connection. Outside, the mist thickened. Something was moving through the shadows of the forest, and it was coming closer. Lyra knew instinctively that the world she had fled from had followed her here. And yet, she did not turn away. She could not. Her wolf listened. Kale listened. And the forest waited, holding its breath. The sun rose over Varendor Castle, but its light did little to pierce the shadow that clung to the halls. Lyra moved quietly through the corridors, her senses alert. The castle was alive with whispers, some human, some darker, carried on currents of magic she could feel but not yet name. She had been here a night, yet it already felt like a world apart from the forest she had known. Every step brought her closer to Kale, the Alpha King, yet also deeper into the unknown of herself. Her wolf stirred within her, restless, always sensing the edges of danger and possibility. Kale had not spoken much since dawn. He observed her, always from a distance, sometimes lingering near corridors or in the shadowed garden. His presence was constant, like the pull of gravity, sometimes comforting, sometimes impossible to escape. Lyra had learned to meet his gaze, though the tension between them burned like a controlled flame. That morning, a messenger arrived, breathless and pale. "My king," he said, "strange things stir in the northern forests. Shadows, creatures moving beyond our knowledge." Villagers whisper of a curse awakening. Kale's eyes darkened. He did not speak, but the weight of command fell on the room like a shadow. Lyra watched him, sensing the tension coil in his body in the same way her wolf coiled when danger approached. Something in him seemed tied to these omens, something she could not yet name. Later, in the castle gardens, Kale finally spoke to her. The mist of early morning clung to the stone pathways. Flowers bent unnaturally, their colors deep and strange, as if touched by the curse itself. "You are stronger than you know," Kale said. His tone was not gentle, yet it carried an odd warmth. "Your wolf is not just instinct. It is a reflection of what others fear and what you could become." Lyra shivered, not from cold but from the weight of his words. "And what I could become frightens you," she said softly, surprising herself with the defiance in her voice. Kale tilted his head, studying her. "No," he said, "it fascinates me, and frightens me, yes, but I have lived with fear for decades. I know its shape. Yours is different. Yours is free, untamed, and yet it obeys me in ways it will not obey the world." Lyra's wolf growled softly within her. It was a warning, or perhaps a question. Why did this man command such attention from her inner strength? She did not answer. She could feel the pull of something older than either of them, a connection neither fully understood yet. That night Kale gave her her first task, a journey into the forbidden forest. "You must go alone," he said, "and face the shadows there. Learn to control what moves within you. You will find that fear and strength are not enemies but partners." Lyra's heart hammered. She had avoided this forest all her life. It was where the oldest curses slept, where wolves of legend roamed, where mortals became lost forever. And yet, she felt a thrill of anticipation, a pull she could not resist. "Why me?" she asked. Kale's eyes met hers, stormy and unreadable. "Because you are not just any wolf," he said. "You are mine to test but not to own. Obedience is not submission here, it is survival." Lyra nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of his words. Her wolf growled in agreement, eager to run, eager to prove itself. The forest greeted her with silence first. The trees towered like ancient sentinels, their branches twisting into shapes that seemed almost human. Mist coiled around her ankles, and every sound, each snap of a twig, each rustle, felt amplified. She felt eyes on her, unseen yet knowing, watching her every move. Then she saw it, a shadow flickering between the trees. It moved with purpose, not like an animal but like something sentient. Lyra's wolf stirred, claws and teeth of instinct unsheathed in her mind. Her fear rose, but Kale's words echoed. "Fear and strength are not enemies." She took a step forward, then another, until she confronted the shadow. It was a wolf, larger than any she had ever seen, with eyes like molten gold. But this wolf was not just a creature, it carried intelligence, a knowing that chilled her to the bone. "You are not ready," it said, voice echoing in her mind. Lyra's wolf bristled. "I will be," she thought back, even though her heart pounded. "I am ready." The shadow lunged, not to attack but to test. Lyra mirrored its movements, instinct and control flowing together. She felt her own strength grow, felt the wolf within her align with the shadows, not against them. For the first time she did not run. She did not hide. She faced the forest, the wolf, and herself. When she returned to the castle, dawn was breaking. Kale awaited her in the courtyard, eyes sharp, reading her like a map of unspoken emotions. "You faced it," he said, "and yet you have only begun to understand." Lyra's wolf curled within her, still restless but calmer. "I feel something," she admitted. "Something stronger than fear," Kale nodded. "It is power," he said, "and also trust. You can feel it because you have allowed yourself to see me not as a king but as a man who is bound by his own chains." Lyra's eyes widened. Chains. The king who seemed so untouchable was bound in some way. "Tell me," she whispered. "What binds you?" Kale hesitated, a flicker of vulnerability passing across his stormy gaze. "The throne," he said finally, "and a curse. My family has carried it for generations." Power that should protect the kingdom, but also isolates the one who wields it. I am feared, yes, I am respected, but I am alone. Lyra felt a pang of understanding. She too was bound by fear, by difference, by the wolf within her. And yet in Kale's eyes she saw a reflection of herself. Two beings, cursed and powerful, drawn to one another by recognition and longing. That evening in the great hall, Kale brought her to the center. Torches flickered, casting long shadows across the marble floor. He did not speak immediately, only watched her. "Do you understand now?" he asked softly. "Your fear is your gift, my curse is my prison. Together we may find a way to walk between them." Lyra nodded, though her heart raced. Her wolf stirred, sensing the truth in his words, sensing the closeness that had grown between them without either acknowledging it. But the moment was broken by a scream from the castle gates. Soldiers ran, weapons raised, and Lyra's wolf leapt within her, senses alert. Someone was approaching. Not human, not wholly beast, something older, something angry. Kale moved swiftly, his presence commanding the hall, yet his eyes flicked to Lyra. "Stay close," he said, "and remember, look at me when you're afraid." Lyra did. And in that instant she understood. Fear was no longer just a warning. It was a bridge between her and her wolf, between her and Kale, between the past and the future. The gates burst open and shadows poured in from the forest. The castle trembled. Lyra's wolf leapt within her, claws and teeth unsheathed, instincts aligned with Kale's command. They were no longer master and servant. They were two forces, drawn together, facing a danger neither fully understood, yet both prepared to confront. The shadows twisted and moved, whispering curses older than the kingdom, and Lyra felt her heart race, not with fear but with recognition of the power inside her. Kale moved beside her, steady, commanding, yet unafraid. And then in the darkened hall a figure stepped forward from the shadows, a wolf, larger and more commanding than any she had faced in the forest. Its eyes burned with intelligence and malice. It knew her. It knew Kale. Lyra's wolf growled. Kale's hand rose instinctively. The air crackled with anticipation. "You are not ready," the shadow wolf whispered. Lyra looked at Kale, his eyes stormy, commanding, yet gentle in a way only she could see. She nodded once and he whispered, "Look at me when you're afraid." She did. And the wolf obeyed, not just hers but the one in the shadows. The castle trembled. The night held its breath. And somewhere beyond the walls, the forest waited, alive with secrets, curses, and the promise of a destiny neither of them could yet escape. The castle of Varendor had grown quieter after the night of shadows. The corridors still echoed with whispers of fear, but Lyra walked through them with a new resolve. Her wolf, once restless and anxious, now prowled within her with a purpose. She had survived the forest, faced the shadow wolf, and returned alive. And yet she sensed that this was only the beginning. Kale watched her from a distance, always alert, always calculating. The weight of his crown pressed on him visibly, a silent reminder of the curse he bore. But when he looked at her, there was something softer, something rarely revealed to anyone else. Vulnerability. And that vulnerability drew her in, even as she fought to keep her independence. The morning was cold, the castle wrapped in mist. Lyra found herself in the training yard, practicing movements her wolf instinctively guided her to perform. She moved with precision, grace, and the controlled ferocity of someone who had survived fear itself. "You are growing stronger," Kale said, stepping from the shadows. His cloak rustled softly, the sound sharp against the quiet morning. But strength without control is dangerous. Lyra paused, breathing heavily, her heart still pounding. "And control without strength is empty," she replied, surprising even herself. Kale's gaze sharpened. For a moment the king and the wolf within her recognized something in each other, a balance of fear and power. Neither could dominate completely, yet both were drawn to the other, irresistibly. "You are learning," Kale said, a hint of admiration in his voice. "But the forest tests differently than these stones." Lyra nodded. She had faced the shadow wolf, yes, but the forest was alive with secrets, curses older than memory. Her wolf within her had obeyed the shadows instinctively, but she knew that more trials awaited. Before she could ask, the castle bells rang sharply. A messenger arrived, cloak soaked with the morning mist. "My king," he said, breathless, "from the northern border strange movements again. Shadows, wolves, something unnatural. Villagers have disappeared." Kale's jaw tightened. "Gather the guards," he ordered. Then his gaze turned to Lyra. "You will come with me." Lyra's wolf stirred, ready, alert. She had expected this, feared this, yet her body responded with anticipation rather than dread. She nodded, meeting Kale's eyes. "I will." The journey north was tense. Mist clung to the trees like spirits, and the forest seemed darker, older, as if aware of their passage. Kale rode silently beside her, his presence both protective and commanding. Neither spoke much, but the air between them vibrated with unspoken understanding and a growing closeness. As night fell, they made camp near a small clearing. A fire burned between them, casting flickering light on Kale's stormy face and Lyra's tense expression. The wolves in the forest howled at a distance, and Lyra felt the stirrings of her own wolf awaken in response. "You are not afraid," Kale said quietly, breaking the silence. Lyra shook her head. "I am aware," she said. "There is fear, yes, but it does not control me anymore." Kale studied her for a long moment. "You have learned quickly," he said. "Most would have fled entirely. Most would have given in to instinct without control." Lyra's wolf growled softly inside her. She did not need to explain. Kale's eyes softened, though his posture remained commanding. He reached across the fire, almost instinctively, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Do not mistake this for weakness," he said, his voice low. "I do not give this lightly." Lyra's heart beat faster, not from fear, but from a strange, dangerous anticipation. She felt the wolf within her quiet, recognizing a trust forming between them, fragile, unspoken, yet real. The night deepened. Shadows moved closer in the forest, unnatural shapes shifting among the trees. Lyra felt her pulse quicken. Kale rose, his hand resting instinctively on the hilt of his sword. "They come for us," he said, eyes scanning the darkness. "But together, we are more than they expect." Lyra's wolf stirred, instincts sharpening. She nodded, understanding. She had faced the shadow wolf before, had survived its intelligence and power. But this was different. A force more ancient, more cunning, and perhaps drawn by Kale's curse, or by her own wolf. The first attack came silently. Shadows erupted from the mist, twisting forms that were neither fully beast nor fully human. Lyra's wolf leapt within her, guiding her movements with precision, her reflexes sharper than they had ever been. Kale moved beside her, a storm of calculated power, sword flashing in the firelight. They fought as one. Not master and servant, not king and subject, but two forces aligned, instinct and control, wolf and human, moving in perfect rhythm. The shadows fell back, but more came, whispering curses and threats older than memory. At one point, a shadow lunged at Lyra from behind. Her wolf roared, instincts and thought fused, and she turned with a speed that startled even Kale. The shadow's attack failed, and she countered, sending it back into the mist. Kale's eyes met hers briefly, and in that glance was recognition, admiration, and something deeper, something dangerous and tender. When the shadows finally withdrew, the forest was silent. Mist hung heavy in the air. Lyra's chest heaved. Kale's hand rested lightly on her shoulder, steadying, protective, yet acknowledging her strength. "You survived," he said, "but more will come. The forest knows you now. Your wolf, it has awakened something." Lyra felt both pride and unease. Her wolf had obeyed her instinctively, yet Kale's presence had guided it, shaped it, and given it control. She realized with a shiver that their connection was more than training or obedience. It was something ancient, something binding their fates together. That night they camped in silence. The fire burned low. Kale did not speak much, but when he did, his voice was softer, almost personal. "You are not like the others," he said. "And I am not like the others either. The curse, my throne, my solitude, they have taught me to be cautious with trust. But you are different. You make me human." Lyra's heart skipped. She had not expected vulnerability from the Alpha King, the feared, commanding ruler. Yet there it was, raw, unguarded like a crack in a wall of stone. Her wolf within her recognized it, sensing the truth of his words. She began, then stopped. Words felt insufficient. She had learned that actions carried more weight than speech. Her wolf nuzzled her awareness, urging her to respond with instinct, with understanding. Kale watched her, eyes searching, until she finally nodded. Not in submission, but in acknowledgement. A fragile trust born of fear, strength, and necessity. They did not sleep much that night. The forest hummed with power, alive with curses, shadows, and unseen eyes. Lyra's wolf paced within her, restless but controlled, sensing the threats, the opportunities, and the bond that was forming between her and Kale. As dawn approached, Kale spoke again. "We are bound together now," he said softly, almost a whisper. "By fate, by choice, by what is yet to come. You will need me and I will need you." Lyra met his gaze steadily, wolf and human in harmony. "And what comes next?" she asked. Kale's eyes darkened. "The true test. Not the forest, not the shadows, but the forces that wish to claim us both. The kingdom, the curse, and the wolves themselves, they will come. And when they do, we must be ready to face it together." Before she could respond, a distant howl split the morning air. It was not her wolf. It was larger, deeper, and filled with intelligence and menace. Lyra's wolf stirred violently, claws and teeth ready. Kale's hand went instinctively to his sword, but his eyes held hers. "Look at me when you're afraid," he whispered. Lyra obeyed. The wolf within her quieted, listening. Together, they faced the unknown threat approaching through the mist. Two forces bound by trust, by fear, by power, by something unspoken, ready to meet whatever came from the forest. The shadow moved closer, and Lyra realized that the forest, the curse, and Kale's own secret power were not the only dangers. There were others, forces that desired to claim them, to use them, to destroy what they could not control. And the kingdom itself was at stake. Her wolf growled low, heart-pounding. Kale's presence beside her was steady, commanding, protective. And in that shared silence, Lyra understood something she had not allowed herself to feel before. She was no longer afraid. Not because the threat was gone, but because she had someone to face it with. Someone who would meet her strength with his own. Someone who understood the bond of fear and power. Someone whose eyes demanded acknowledgement, respect, and trust. The sun rose higher, cutting through the mist, and the distant shadow howled again. Lyra and Kale prepared themselves. The forest had awakened. The wolves had answered. And the story between them, their bond, their power, and their future, was about to be tested in ways neither had imagined. The castle trembled in the gray light of dawn. Shadows twisted along the walls like living smoke, moving unnaturally, whispering curses from a time before humans remembered. Lyra stood in the center of the great hall, her wolf coiled inside her, senses stretched to the limits. Every instinct screamed that the threat approaching was more than any forest shadow, more than a beast. They faced something ancient, something bound to both her and Kale. Kale's presence beside her was steady, commanding, yet softened by an unusual vulnerability. The Alpha King's eyes scanned the room and then rested on her. "You are ready," he said, voice low but firm. "But this is no longer just a test. This is survival." Lyra nodded, her wolf growling softly in anticipation. She had learned strength and control, had faced fear and shadows, but the figure emerging from the mist before them, larger than any shadow wolf, glowing with ancient light, made her realize that all her previous trials were preparation. The true battle was here. The figure stepped fully into the hall. It was a wolf, yes, but unlike any natural creature. Its fur shimmered with silver like moonlight, and its eyes burned with wisdom, sorrow, and a quiet rage. Lyra's breath caught. She knew instinctively that this wolf held the secrets of her lineage and of Kale's curse. "You have come," Kale said, sword ready, but his voice carried recognition. "It is time." The wolf's eyes shifted to Lyra, and she felt a shock of memory and fear pass through her. Whispers from the forest, visions she had suppressed, the ancient power within her, it all answered to this creature. Her wolf stirred violently, claws and teeth unsheathed in her mind, and yet she did not flinch. She met the creature's gaze, and in that instant something profound passed between them: recognition, understanding, and the acceptance of what she was meant to be. "You are not alone," Kale said softly, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "Look at me when you're afraid." Lyra obeyed. Her fear did not vanish, but it shifted. It became clarity, purpose, and courage. Her wolf, sensing the alignment, calmed slightly, standing ready but controlled. Together they faced the silver wolf. The ancient creature stepped forward, and the hall seemed to shiver with its presence. Whispers of old curses echoed in every corner. Kale moved closer to Lyra, positioning himself as both protector and equal, as he had always done. "This is not your enemy," Kale said. "It seeks balance. It is the key to breaking the curse." Lyra hesitated. The wolf's gaze met hers again, and she understood instinctively. To face this, to survive, she would need to accept the full truth of her power. Her wolf stirred, no longer aggressive but questioning, curious. Slowly she approached the silver wolf. Every step was measured, every heartbeat loud in her ears. The mist seemed to wrap around them, carrying whispers of the past, of ancestors, of kings and wolves bound together in a pact older than memory. When she was close enough, the silver wolf lowered its massive head. Lyra reached out, hand trembling, and touched its fur. A surge of energy passed through her, a connection to the forest, to Kale, to herself. Her wolf growled softly, not in anger but in awe. "You see now," Kale said, watching her, "the curse is not punishment, it is a test, and the forest, it judges the heart." Lyra closed her eyes, letting the connection flow. She saw visions of the past, kings who had failed, wolves who had protected, humans who had forgotten the balance. And then she saw herself, not afraid, not bound, but whole. Her wolf and she, her courage and her instinct, aligned with the power of the forest and the magic of the king. The silver wolf stepped back, bowing its head slightly in acknowledgement. Lyra understood. It recognized her strength, her control, and her purpose. She turned to Kale, whose eyes held pride, relief, and something deeper, something unspoken. "You have done it," he said softly. "You are free, and so am I." The curse, centuries in the making, began to unravel. Shadows in the corners of the hall flickered and faded. The whispers of old magic grew faint and then quiet. Kale felt the weight on his soul lift, the isolation that had bound him for decades dissolving. And Lyra felt the wolf within her settle completely, no longer restless, no longer a prisoner of fear. For a long moment they stood together, breathing in the quiet victory. The castle was still. The sun broke through the mist outside, casting light on stone walls and towers. Lyra felt warmth she had never known, safety, connection, and belonging. Kale reached for her hand, his grip firm yet gentle. "You have changed everything," he said. "The curse, the shadows, even me." Lyra met his gaze, her wolf resting peacefully within her. "And you have changed me," she replied. "Not by command, but by standing with me, by trusting me, by seeing me." The air between them shifted. The tension, the unspoken longing, the emotional walls they had both built, cracks appeared, letting light in. She stepped closer. Kale did not move away. Instead, he mirrored her movement, closing the distance with careful patience, respect, and something more. "Look at me," he whispered again, the words heavy with meaning. Lyra obeyed. Her fear, her hesitation, her doubt, they all melted away in the steady weight of his gaze. And in that moment, a silent understanding passed between them. Trust, respect, and connection were stronger than any curse, any shadow, any fear. The silver wolf let out a soft, approving howl and slipped silently back into the forest. Lyra watched it disappear, understanding that their bond with the wild, the magic, and the forest itself was eternal. They were not merely survivors, they were part of the balance. In the days that followed, the kingdom of Varendor began to heal. Villagers returned, whispers of fear quieted, and the forest seemed less threatening, less alive with shadows. Lyra and Kale moved through the castle as equals, their connection deepened by trust and shared trials. They trained together, planned together, and faced dangers side by side, not as master and servant, but as partners, bound by destiny and choice. Lyra's wolf became a guide rather than a warning. It prowled the forests and the castle grounds, sensing threats, offering counsel, and reminding her of her strength. Kale's curse, once a burden heavier than the crown, became a tool of protection, tempered by the balance Lyra had brought to him. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across the castle, Kale led Lyra to the highest tower. They looked out over the forest and the distant mountains, the wind carrying scents of earth and magic. "You could have stayed in the forest," Kale said quietly, "hidden safe, avoiding this life." Lyra shook her head, wolf and human aligned in thought and purpose. "I could not," she replied. "Not after seeing what we could be together." Kale's eyes softened. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, just as he had in the forest months ago. "And I could not face the world alone, not after meeting you." For a long moment, they simply stood, sharing the silence, sharing the trust, sharing the connection that had been forged through fear, battle, and understanding. The castle was quiet, the shadows gone, and yet something in the wind hinted that the forest, the wolves, and the magic would always be alive, always watching, always reminding them of the balance they had achieved. Finally, Lyra rested her hand on Kale's, feeling the warmth of life, of courage, of connection. Her wolf settled fully within her, a silent witness to the peace they had earned and the trust they had forged. "You are my equal," Kale said, his voice almost a whisper, "and together we are stronger than anything that comes." Lyra nodded. "Stronger," she agreed. The sun set, casting long shadows that no longer threatened. And as night fell, Lyra and Kale stood together, ready to face the future, whatever it might bring. The forest watched, silent but approving, and the wolves howled once more. A song of freedom, trust, and the bond between the Alpha King and the wolf within the girl who had obeyed him and chosen to stay.